Hello and welcome to Imperfect Parenting.
Hello, here we go.
We're here in it
Just
to
had
win
Seth
it.
last week.
I know. He's always
Love that guy.
he's always fun. We always listen to Seth's podcast before we record the fillers of the week just to refresh us. And I'm usually laughing at whatever we talk about in these, and it just was pretty funny.
He brings out the funny.
He does.
It's funny, the powerful, and the deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He has a gift. He has a gift for sure. But it's a great topic. I'm excited about what we've been talking about because I think a lot of parents want to create creative thinkers, critical thinkers, just to a generation that needs it as this up and coming. It's fun to watch in our own kids. So I know that parents are interested in that.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah, it's a big conversation, I think, that's happening more and more. So I think just to add strength to the conversation feels exciting and helpful. And let's keep doing it, parents.
Let's keep going.
But we need to start somewhere else.
Yeah.
You should share this one.
Okay. I will share this one. The word that is bolded at the end is probably my most frustrating word when it came to during COVID, because I was tired of hearing this word because I felt like it was used all the time. But it's a classic for the generation that is ours. Good old Friends TV show. This is Ross. And the scene where they're trying to get the couch up the stairs of their 2-story apartment in New York. And it's not really working. So it's just Ross holding one end of the couch, yelling this word, but it says parents' life skills. And Ross is yelling the word pivot. Pivot, which is, if you've seen Friends, that's the scene. They're trying to pivot over and over again. But I
think every organization found that clip and played it for their employees
probably
during COVID.
Yeah. But it is, that is really what parenting is all about, is lots of pivoting from one moment to the next, man.
Probably not going to go the way you think it was going to.
It almost always is not. Let's just guarantee that right now. It's not. It's not going to go the way that you thought it was. So get ready to pivot and pivot a lot. And I think I've said it before, but I do feel like our kids change every 6 months. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you feel like you've got that sweet spot and you're cruising, pivot. Mm-hmm. Get ready to pivot.
All right, we can stop saying pivot now.
Well, that's.
We're going to keep doing it. We need to stop saying it.
Pivot.
You already said that you're done with that word.
I know, I am. It's not been used as much, so it's not triggering me.
Okay, good.
It's a safe space. Okay.
That leads us right into today's topic. I think one of the things we talked with Seth about a little bit was just this thing that children have, and I think it could be said sometimes for adults that it works out of us. But this curiosity, that children have this natural curiosity. And I think as parents, it's actually a way to protect it and farm it, so to say, where we're helping grow that. I think the challenge in I think the end of this episode, if I remember correctly, he gave parents the challenge to actually spend a day and just ask your kids questions.
Yeah, and not do the thinking for them.
Yeah.
And
become curious and almost put on display.
Mm-hmm. It is that would be probably the best thing that we could do for 2 reasons. One, it would reveal to us the amount of work that we are putting into thinking for our kids.
Yep.
Even if you didn't do it all day, just do it until noon. See what happens, because you'll get a meal and a half in there, at least a snack for sure. But that's the part where we're not leading in curiosity because we just think for them. We give out commands a lot, which is, one of the things, our tools, which we'll get into another time, but trying to help practice our posture of, I want you to be a thinker. The other thing I think it would create is it would require this child to get used to, my parents aren't going to do everything for me. Yeah. It's not about watching them struggle or suffer even. The struggles, there's a little bit of that, but it's not the suffering. We're not trying to make them suffer. We're trying to invite thinking. Mm-hmm. because we want them to be thinkers in this world that's crazy and big. I want, Addie's a pretty critical thinker just by nature. I would say out of the three, she's probably the most critical thinker. And she's probably the most challenging on everything, which is me.
Comes with it.
Pointing at myself. So she naturally kind of has this meter that won't adjust, especially if she doesn't want to do something or think it's right. Where I think I've seen Lainey has that too, but it's further down the line. So does Lincoln, but it's not as close. And so part of this has to be with you asking questions and teaching them what you believe and what's okay and what's not okay for you, and creating that courage to develop that, I think, even. Yeah. And I don't know that a lot of homes are doing this so that when they're with their friends, they're critically thinking in those situations. Yeah. What are you standing for? What's not okay? What's okay? Not just the rules of our family, but really for you.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking there's a little opportunity to even practice this culture. Like this morning, I'm sitting with Lincoln. He's doing a little math test. He said, Dad, can you help me? Because he wants to think through it, and he probably actually wants me to do it for him. So we got to each question.
You're better at math than he is at this point.
That's true. I hope so. that line's coming pretty quick, I think, where it crosses.
I know.
But we got to each question. I said, okay, what do you think? And he has to go through these different, it's essentially shapes describing something. It doesn't matter. But he has to distinguish between the stuff. And he's like, well, which one is it? I said, well, what do you think? So he has to look at each option and pick the right one. And I'm just watching him, like his little brain going. My point there is there's little opportunities probably every day to practice this idea in this culture. So when the big things come up, this is a part of who we are. This is how we handle little things. So when the big things show up, we're like, well, what do you think? Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Who taught you that idea right there? Which we've had lots of those conversations. We just spent 2 months with this podcast talking about sex and the what culture teaches us, what the Lord teaches us, all those things. I think why we take a stand, where we take a stand. And I think as adults, we're doing this all the time. Or we're not.
Yeah.
So it may even be taking a look at ourselves and figuring out how we're doing with that. And then what are the questions we're asking our children to help them arrive at a place that they believe in for them.
You said you opened earlier with Seth talking about we kind of grow out of this curiosity. Angie Taylor, our kids' co-founder and principal, their school, talks about leading with curiosity, to be curious. Because that really does, if I'm curious and I am teaching you to be curious, it's just a different mechanism than to bark out a command or be judgmental or critical. But curiosity is also this place that helps create safety, I think, when you're in a relational piece, is help me understand what you mean. I'd love to just have clarity of what you're trying to accomplish. It almost diffuses kind of this anxiety. So with thinking, if we teach them to be curious about a problem, whether it's schoolwork or something they don't understand. So all the time when the kids are frustrated with a school assignment, I'm usually encouraging them to go ask questions to their teacher rather than just live in that frustrated space. Because until you are curious, ask a question, get clarity, you just stay frustrated. Yeah. And that's instead of just emailing the teacher for them or taking it away and doing it, that's the default of as far as what we need to, the challenge of not doing all the things for them. It's just helping provoke them to really help them see how capable they are of this. Totally. Because if they can believe they can have a conversation with an adult about something as scary as a math problem through an email, because that's the day we live in now, how much more courage will they develop when they have their first job and they have to have a hard conversation with their boss or set a boundary? Or, if we can start it really young and help them build that courage of asking questions isn't a bad thing. And then we obviously filled with respect and all that. But
I have this conversation with Lincoln all the time at Taekwondo because, he just went through this whole testing season. He's getting ready to be promoted in his belt level. And so he's constantly got things he wants to ask his teacher. And he's like, can you do it for me? And I used to do it more often because we'd do it together. But now I'm like, no, you can do it. It's like, Dad, can you come with me? I said, I will stand behind you. I will go in that direction with you, but you need to ask the question. And, it can feel scary to ask an adult something that they might say no to, or they might have a reaction. They never do.
No.
But he's just navigating these feelings. And I'm watching his confidence increase. And part of it's connection with these people, but part of it's just him practicing what you're talking about. I think Seth said it this way in the last one. I think it was Seth. I don't know. But
one of the 3 great people on that podcast.
But he said, listen to lead, not to solve. We talk a lot about listening, and that really is the core of communication and all those things. But I think in this conversation, I think learning as a parent that I'm going to listen to lead you towards a solution that you found more than listen just to solve it for you. So we can move on, and maybe I'll feel better about this in the moment, but later on, I've solved it for you, so I have to do this again later. I have to keep solving it for you because that's the relationship we've now built.
I think that's why we use the phrase, I think love and logic is where it came from, few words mixed with meaningful action, which is essentially, I'm not going to lecture you about this. I'm going to give you a few words of correction or input, and then there's meaningful action behind it, which is, you're taking it from one level to the next level, but you're requiring something of them. And, I want you to ask hard questions. I want you to be able to ask, I was just at an event with Addie, and I spoke 4 times, and she was there, front row for all of them. And it was a women's retreat, and, this is our first trip together, it was fun. It was special for the 2 of us. We had lots of giggles along the way. But I asked her, I said, do you have any feedback for me on how this went? And she laughed at me like, you're asking for my feedback on your speaking. And I said, yeah. I said, I want to make sure that whether I'm speaking to you or 70-year-olds in the room, just seemed like a big number. She's 14. That what I'm saying is clear and concise and is helpful. And I said, because I think I value feedback, and I'm curious to see if you have anything for me. And again, she was laughing at it, but then later on she asked me for feedback on something else. And I just thought, oh, this is the culture of critical thinkers, is that we're not afraid of feedback. That's the other thing, is I think critical thinkers aren't afraid of that feedback because we don't see it as a saying of failure as much as we see it as an invitation for growth and getting better, which is that leading with curiosity.
Yep.
And I want so badly for our kids to not be afraid of failure, but for them to be willing to grow when they do get feedback.
Yep.
So part of this is when feedback comes, learning that it's not the end of the world. And I think that has to be something that as parents we're modeling as well.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Brittney here. I'm normally on the Kylo Show, yes, but I wrote a book. I wrote a book for parents, but I talk a lot about moms. So if you're listening to this and you're a mom who's frustrated, who feels like you're failing, who feels hopeless in this game of parenting that we're in. So if that's you, mom, buy yourself this gift on Mother's Day. It's going to be worth it. So I hope that you feel blessed and encouraged by my new book, Imperfect Parenting. You can find it at imperfectparenting.co.
I keep thinking as well as you're talking, you mentioned lecturing parents earlier as well. I think that's kind of the opposite of what we're talking about a little bit. And it's usually just the anxiety of the parent. Is this might be what you learned growing up from your parents. your anxiety is telling you, let's just get this thing solved. Let me solve the problem for you. And nothing really is solved other than it's just lessons the child is learning in your relationship that you probably don't want them to be learning. That my parent's going to talk to me for a while. They're going to say lots of words. I'll tune them out, and then I'll just try to do it again, or try to be caught again. And I think parents who lecture, that could be a different word for it, but it's usually from a good heart. I want my child to succeed, but I'm not actually teaching you how to think through this process and solve your problem. So if there's any lecturers out there, and we're all guilty of it, we've all had those moments where I just think, if I can talk just long enough, we'll fix this problem. I think start catching yourself, and if you find yourself there, pause for a minute and turn it into a question.
Well, in the lecturing exchange, we are not. We're hoping that an owner of the problem emerges, but we don't actually help position for them to identify the owner of the problem.
Yeah.
We just want to convince you that you should be the owner of the problem.
There you go.
So that's why being a lecture style parent is almost counterproductive to try and create critical thinkers, because I don't lead them towards, whose problem is this? What happened? What should be done? Or whatever the questions are. I'm trying to convince you to own this problem that is clearly yours, but I didn't actually teach you how to think about how you can see that it's your problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of the lecture style parenting is also, just give it to me. Fine. I'll do it because you da-da-da-da-da-da. Or, this is how it's supposed to be done because of da-da-da-da-da-da. And this person's still left with, it's like if you wanted to teach your kid how to fish, but you never let them actually throw the cast or reel it in or feel the tension of when a fish is on versus not on, how will they ever actually be able to be super successful until this moment happens? Well, what if back in the day when they're supposed to be learning this is they're catching little tiny rainbow trouts, and then all of a sudden they go into life and it's swordfish that we're catching. If I didn't have practice to being a critical thinker throughout my childhood and I just landed in the big ocean of life, I'm going to have some hard encounters where I think this is what creates victims a little bit, is I am looking for someone else to tell me what to do.
Yep.
Is this my problem or not my problem? Okay, you say it's my problem, so what do you want me to do? And we just walk around as victims. So really working on creating critical thinkers is helping our kids stay away from the pitfall of being a victim. Not that it doesn't mean you can't be, you definitely could, but it does help them just think of things differently. All the time our kids are like, just Adeline, she's got her friends and they're in a text thread and one gets really quiet and all of a sudden it feels like there's distance happening. Instead of kind of having this panic victim mentality, she's thinking, oh man, did I do something? Did I communicate a devalue message? I want to do whatever I can to. So she on her own is thinking through, is this mine to own? Did I make a mess somewhere along the way that's causing distance in my relationship? And then, she does all that she needs to do to check those boxes of yes or no. And she pursues. And every time, at the other end of it is she ends up more connected, whether it was something she did or not. But she's learned to think through this because we have a lot of, I would say, more relationally critical thinkers. That's our vein.
That's our strength.
I don't know that we're not mathematicians, clearly, because we called them shapes earlier and stuff, but we are critical thinkers in other ways. And, but that's, I think if you can create, opportunities for our kids now, it helps them later on. And it's just a practice you want to do. And so it really starts with figuring out how to ask questions and go from there.
Which I think we're watching this right now with our oldest, with Delaney. If you haven't read the book yet, Imperfect Parenting, there's a whole chapter where Brittney and Delaney kind of spell out the one of the hardest seasons we went through with her. And really the lessons she had to learn, which really are connected to what we're talking about. She had to begin to critically think about her future and her decisions and where she's going. And
the impact on her relationships and all these things.
And watching her now, when she calls us as an 18-year-old who's moved out, living on her own, having a bad day, all we have is questions.
And that's, questions is where we're staying, because when we go into lecture, we lose her.
Yep.
She's not looking for a lecture. She's looking for wisdom.
Yep.
And so questions help her get to thinking, which is then she's either asking for input, which is seeking out wisdom, or she's finding a solution to her problem.
Yep.
And it's a hard battle. I was talking to a lady this weekend who said, I'm in the same season that you were in with your daughter, and I'm just doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. And I said, okay, well, how well are you asking questions? She's like, I'm not. I said, well, that's where I would start. And she goes, well, I get mad. I said, well, you got to manage yourself then. But it's, she's scared, hurt, and frustrated, which she loses her thinking brain because she gets super emotional. Yeah. And then she goes into the lecture and control brain, which she's hoping then will convince her daughter of the problems which she has. So this is why we have to go back to being critical thinkers ourselves. Yeah. I have to ask questions so I can help this person. It doesn't mean I'm not hurt still or frustrated or sad. It just means I'm not operating in that space. Yeah. And I think that's probably what gets hard when you have older kids that are making messes. I mean, little kids make messes and it's frustrating. I don't know. It's just painful. Yeah. It feels different. It's exhausting. I would say it's exhausting at a different level. I refer to our dog as the 2-year-old, the toddler in our house.
A puppy. Oh my gosh.
She's not even a puppy. She's a year and a half, but maybe that's puppy. She's exhausting. But it's just, that's the closest thing I have to a toddler, guys. That's why we refer to Rosie, the toddler. But, you have this exhausted space when they're younger. You have I'm scared space a bit more when they're older. But either side, the invitation to try and control and maneuver them, whether it's through manipulation or control, that's probably the temptation you've got to stay away from in your emotional state and lean back onto, okay, I'm a critical thinker. I can think through this. I can help empower them. How am I going to do that? Because it's going to require me to, not live in this state of frustration or scared. Yep. And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I think we talk about asking questions all the time. This just hopefully adds a new element or different thing to consider. Is it's actually helping create something inside your children that they're going to use the rest of their life.
Totally.
And create the life that they want to live in and want to invite people into, because they've learned how to process through this stuff themselves. So, the question we ask all the time is, what do you need? I think a great question to ask yourself as a parent before you even get to the child is, what do I need? Just processing through critically thinking about yourself first, because that's going to set you up to not feel like you have to lecture. I think the lectures are often, I'm trying to get a need met. I'm trying to feel better about this situation. I'm scared. But if I know what I'm needing and what I'm scared about, I can come with certain questions, and it's just a different equation.
Yeah. So I remember there was a time I took all three of them to Target. And I don't think the kids ever really fight much. I mean, they have their moments, but they don't really fight much. They're more getting loud and spastic because they're having a good old time. So I remember when you talk about what I need, for me, I care a lot about self-awareness. It's one of the messages that I'm known for around here at Loving on Purpose and Kylo University and all the things that we do in marriage retreats. I'm usually the self-awareness person. So self-awareness is, I care deeply about that my kids know how to be aware of themselves, how they impact their environments. I'll go as far as saying I get triggered when people lack self-awareness. It frustrates me. So it's just a core to my core. I don't know if it's an Enneagram 1 thing. I don't know if it's a D thing. I don't really know what it is, where that wiring came, but it's in there.
It's loud.
It is loud. So we're in Target and we're going, I think we were looking actually for a Father's Day card. It was a couple years ago, probably 4 years ago. And we're in this aisle and it's full of people because everyone's buying Father's Day cards. And I've got a cart and all 3 of my little golden retriever puppies, aka my children, and they are giggling. And I think they keep putting Lincoln in the cart, out of the cart, in the cart. And it was not a big deal because where we were, there wasn't anybody. And then all of a sudden there was like 2 or 3 people and they're still kind of doing this. And something happened to where I think Lincoln, because they were tickling each other or something like that, he fell and hit this lady's cart, which then ran to the side of some other, like the other side of the aisles display. And she just mad dogs them. And I'm here overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, we are lacking self-awareness right now. And I just thought, this is something that's really important to me. I could do one of 2 things. I could get angry with the kids. I could scold them. I could, justify my behavior and because of my march of self-awareness. But they weren't arguing. They weren't fighting. They were having a fun time. Obviously, they ran into this lady, which wasn't okay. But after the lady left our aisle, I turned to them because they all knew that there was some kind of response I was going to be giving. So they look at me. I said, so how do you think people are experiencing you right now? And they kind of all giggled because it's not a question they've never heard before. And they said, probably not very well. I said, how do you want people to experience you? As respectful and aware. I'm like, okay, so what do you need to do to change? And all I did was ask a bunch of questions. Yeah. I didn't have a lecture. I didn't shame them into what behavior I do expect from them and they know better what they should do. And they all adjusted. But the beautiful part, I think, out of that whole story is I asked empowering questions. They had great responses. They regained self-awareness, but it didn't do anything to our relationship. Yeah. They still stayed giggling. They still stayed having a fun time, but it just opened an invitation of, this is something that they know is important to me. They know that their behavior, even if it was lighthearted and fun, had a negative impact to somebody. And then they got to have ownership of adjusting and managing themselves rather than me having to come in and set some hard boundary.
That's awesome.
But it's just, again, we have critical thinkers around relationship. Yeah. But that's our Ben. So of course I would hope that that's the loudest one. But I did love that we continued on, all of us connected, them still having a good time, them still having fun, but and then what I watched is as we went through different aisles and if it got a little out of control, one of them were like reeling it back in. Like, you got to come back in here. You can't be as bad.
Now they're self-managing. Yeah.
And so that's, again, this critical thinker creates personal ownership of certain areas, or it creates someone that is more confident in who they are, the presence that they're bringing. And so that's what I want always is confident kids who feel capable and who are engaged because I've taught them how to think rather than I think for them.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's if you missed the one with Seth, I'd get back and watch that again, or listen to it again, and then catch up with us here. But it's such an important piece. I think we're always practicing this, and if it's something you didn't get growing up as a child, that's a great thing to start now.
Totally.
Is through questions, through even us being curious, we're creating a culture of critical thinkers.
And don't be afraid of, trial and error a little bit in the process of learning. I think just diving in, probably a great place to start is just give yourself a couple hours where you're just asking questions. Yeah. And that'll give you a good read of, what I've got to work on. Yeah. And even that emotional space, like if you're parenting out of this emotional reactionary space majority of the time, that might be a good indicator that it's time for you to become more of a critical thinker. Yeah. And how can you approach this differently? Because if you want this to be something that's loud in your home, you're going to have to lead in it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, parents, go. If you choose to take the challenge, take a few hours this week and just ask questions.
Just ask questions.
Awesome. All right. Till next time.